So we want you to keep that in mind as you're sharing. Mariela and I share with video. We're chatting with each other throughout the time, and then we encourage all of you to use the chat box to participate. And we want to hear from you throughout. You can decide whether you want to turn off your video or keep your video on, but we do ask that everybody stay muted during the discussion. We've tried different formats, and when some people unmute and some people participate in the chat box, it gets a little bit confusing and not equal in terms of the speaking time. So I think we'll go ahead and get started with some introductions. So I am Catarina Rivera. I'm the founder of Blindish Latina. And Blindish Latina is a platform where I'm sharing about my experience with Usher syndrome. Due to Usher syndrome, I wear hearing aids and I also have vision loss. Right now I have a very narrow visual field, which is just about like this. I only see what I'm directly looking at. And I'm also Latina. I'm also a professional, trained in public health and education, and an entrepreneur with a travel company. So I wanted to start sharing my experience on Instagram so that I can educate others, raise awareness, and represent, because I didn't see a lot of people like me in the disability space. So Mariela.
And hi, everyone. My name is Mariela Paulino. I am the founder of Project Hearing. I created Project Hearing because I got so fed up with the inspirational porn that exists within the disability community. And I wanted to talk about the realities, the hard days, the fun days, the technologies, the solutions that I find in my day-to-day life to navigate the world as a person with a hearing disability. So I am working on that for Project Hearing. I also have a full-time job that pays my bills with the City University of New York. I am a project manager there. And so Project Hearing is really my passion project outside of work. So that is what we are. And now, Catarina, why did we start? What is Chicas Talk Disability?
Chicas Talk Disability, we started it during quarantine as a bi-weekly conversation on disability from the perspective of two disabled Latina women, covering different topics and creating a space for community building and conversation. We basically saw a gap and we didn't see the conversations that we were having. We were having informal conversations and we said, wow, we should really invite more people into this space and these things need to be talked about. So that's why we're here, and we try to keep it very relevant and respond to what you all are asking for. So Mariela, do you want to go over the ground rules and expectations?
Yes, so ground rules is mute yourself, which everybody's doing already, yay! The second rule is just be respectful. So if there's an opinion that somebody says that you don't agree with, be respectful for arguing or maybe correcting that person in the misguided opinion or misdirected opinion in the chat. And if you're having a conversation with anyone else. And also, we are trying to really be very intentional in making this a safe space. So again, be respectful and conscious that you're talking to other individuals who may have very different lived experiences than you. So, event structure.
Yes, I also just want to mention that Mariela and I tried to be as unfiltered as possible in this space. So sometimes we might say something that isn't fully polished that maybe you have an issue with, and it's we welcome that dialogue, but we're also trying to be real in this space and authentic to where we are. The other thing is that, we can only represent our perspectives. We don't try to represent everyone's perspectives, and we welcome your contributions. We've learned so much from everyone who's been participating in these conversations. So please do participate in the chat box. So basically, what we're going to do today is we're going to do introductions. Then we're going to have like a centering group question to start today's conversation. And then we have a series of topics that Mariela and I will be discussing. We'll talk about how we feel about what's going on right now. We'll talk about what is going on. What are kind of like that background knowledge that we feel we want everyone to have. We will also then be speaking about why is this relevant for people with disabilities? Why should people with disabilities or the disabled community care or engage with Black Lives Matter and this movement? So that's a really, really important topic that we want to dedicate time to. Then we're going to talk about what are the demands, what are the recommendations that the movements, the protests are asking for. We're going to give a summary of some of those items that we see. And we'll also then talk about how can you be an ally and what are some recommendations for steps that you can take that are concrete. And yeah, what can we do? So that's the scope of what we're going to try to cover today. It's definitely a lot, so we'll do our best. The first thing, Mariela, can you please lead the introductions?
Absolutely. The group question.
I think your video is off. Or no, I see you now. I see you now.
Wait, the group question, correct? Okay.
So in the chat box, we're just going to have everybody enter your name, where you're from, and why you're here today. And we hope to have you all introduce yourselves in the chat.
Yes.
So take a few moments to type and share.
Maybe what is one thing that you're interested in learning today, or how you want to explore the topic?
All right. Hello, Cynthia. Great to see you. Listening and learning. Sue Ellen, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Learning how to be a better ally, provide guidance to your team. Oh, excellent. Okay.
Awesome.
So if you're just joining right now, we're doing introductions and we're asking people to share their name, where they're from, what they're hoping to get out of today.
Oh my goodness, Patrick, all the way from Oregon. That's amazing. We're so happy to have you.
Awesome. I'm glad I pronounced that correctly. Thank you. Anna from New York. Excellent. Okay, you're in the right space. Molly, welcome back.
Whoop, whoop.
Yes. Okay, excellent. A lot of people are very interested in the discussion of how to be a better ally so far. Okay. Thank you, Krista. Excellent.
Awesome.
Welcome, Peter. Awesome. Okay, this is wonderful.
It is such a diverse, geographically diverse crowd. I love it.
Yes.
All right, Katarina, if you're okay with it, I'm open to asking the first group question. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, let's do it.
So let's go ahead and get this party started. So as you're giving your introductions, one of the things that I would like for everyone to also do is to describe in one word how you are feeling today or how you're feeling about having this conversation. Just one word.
I'm going to start calling out the words: grateful, ready, hopeful,
Ready.
openly anxious, inspired.
Oh, yes, that's my favorite word. Excited!
Yes.
Yes, I love it. I'm excited too.
Full, hopeful, also ready. Okay.
Yes.
Excited. Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's get started. Yes?
Ready to learn.
That's my word. I love it.
That's okay.
All right, so let's start the for real conversation. So first topic, how do we feel about what's going on? Are you guys ready? So one more thing is, as we're talking, one of the things that I often do is I ask for thumbs. So you tell me like, I'm doing good, I don't know if this is going, or I'm not comfortable. So how are we doing so far? Thumb? Okay, awesome. So let's get started. So first, I want to acknowledge that a few weeks ago, Katarina and I started having this conversation about everything that's going on politically in the United States. And for me personally, I won't talk for Katarina, but there was a lot of discomfort and uneasiness about being political on Instagram. And there is a lot of that discomfort because it is a highly charged political issue. It is an intense time for some people. And so we wanted to do so respectfully, which we will try to do to the best of our ability for the next hour. One of the things that is also very important that Katarina and I discussed was that when we talk about this topic, we're talking about this topic from the perspective of Latinas. We are talking about this topic from the perspective of two lighter skinned Latinas. And so it is very important for us to be conscious of that as we talk about this issue. Lastly, the last point that I'm going to talk about as we enter this topic is that for me personally, racism is not a lived experience that I have had. I cannot point to a point in my life where I can say, I was discriminated because of my race in this time. Like, I cannot say that. Maybe it has happened. Maybe it hasn't. I can tell you with certainty, I have been discriminated because of my disability, because of sexism, because of other issues, but I cannot point with certainty to a single time that I can say I was discriminated because of my skin color. So that is one of the things that I want to talk about. Also, let's see. It's very important for all of us to acknowledge that there is a certain amount of discomfort that is accompanied with having a conversation about race. It's a very heavy topic. It's a topic that a lot of people feel very heavily about, and that just discussing forces us to have a lot of assumptions about who someone is and what they stand for and what they believe. Katarina?
Yes, thank you for your vulnerability. I think that's just so important to bring to this space. I've been thinking a lot about how do I feel? I feel like there is a cost in not speaking up, and I'm really heartened by the amount of voices that I've seen joining this conversation that I haven't seen before. And I've really seen a lot of companies and corporations speaking up And, I'll speak a little bit more about my feelings on that. But I think that we're really coming to a better understanding of the cost of silence, that silence should not be the option. And by being silent, you're being complicit. You're not helping to change the status quo in any way. And you're actually being harmful with your silence. I also, Mariela, I think I just want to challenge you a little bit on the idea of like being political on Instagram, just for this specific issue. When we talk about Black Lives Matter, to me, and I just feel strongly about this is my perspective, I don't feel like should be political. We're talking about human rights, we're talking about equity. And the people that make it political, I believe, are trying to uphold racism. And I just don't think that it should be viewed as a political thing. It should be viewed as, okay, we're talking about human rights, and this should be a given in our society. And unfortunately, that's not the case. And when we're talking about actually changing the structure of our society, some people are going to lose it. They don't want to give up their advantages. I'm talking specifically about like the white community, and they have a lot of advantages that they've been able to take for granted. I also want to speak about the intersectionality of identities. We are more than one identity. Just myself, I am Latina and I'm disabled. And so my lens is kind of looking in different directions. I'm more than just like participating in one community. And this, I've been thinking a lot and trying to uplift voices of the Black disabled community. And there is intersectionality. There's also within Latino and Latino identity, we have Afro-Latinos. And so they're sometimes not represented, many times not shown as being Latino. Really, you see a lot of images of light skin, a certain look. So that's just something that I want to call out as well. And for all the companies who have been joining the bandwagon, sending out statements, I guess I'm feeling, my question is really like, what actions are you going to take? You have a microculture at your company. And if you're, depending how large you are impacting society and the way people are doing things. For example, how Uber is global. So I'm looking for companies to actually stand behind their statements and take actions on that are uncomfortable, and then have real money attached to them, and that are not just for show. So yeah, what are they actually doing to combat racism instead of just to be popular? Yep. Back to you, Mariela.
And also, Katarina, it's just the hardest thing about this whole conversation is when your friends, your family, people that you really care about, when they say some borderline racist stuff and you're just like, hold up. And to actually have to take the time and have conversations with people, like this is not something that's happening to people over there. Like these are conversations that are happening with our own families, with our closest friends, with our colleagues. So it's just like, so there's a certain level of discomfort for how do you acknowledge these issues with people that you care about. So that's the disclaimer for what's next. So what is going on in the United States? So that's our second topic. And let's first take some time to have a little bit of history behind the timeline. So let's revisit the timeline. On Monday, it's been 100 days since the first confirmed coronavirus case in New York City. Before we go any further, I hope all of you are still doing that 7 p.m. cheer for essential workers, because they have been on the front lines keeping the world running, the United States running. So don't forget to do that 7 p.m. cheer. But let's look at that timeline of and the history behind everything that's been happening. So in New York City specifically, the people that were living in the wealthier neighborhoods, which happened to be white, and the people that were living in poorer neighborhoods, which happened to be people of color, saw drastic differences in how the coronavirus pandemic was managed. People, and this is data that we will share with you after the discussion, but people living in the poorest New York City neighborhoods were dying at double the rate than the more affluent neighborhoods. That was what the data showed. And then, in addition to that, many Black and Latino New Yorkers, New York service workers, and frontline employers were unable to shelter in place and had to continue to work as the crisis progressed, which means that you saw a disproportionate number of people being affected in very different ways when the pandemic initially hit. Katerina?
Yeah. One of the other things that we already know is that there's a lot of job loss and unemployment that happened. And we have seen a disproportionate impact of the recession on Black individuals. They're more likely to work in industries like hospitality, dining, or leisure that have been really hurt by the virus. And those who do have their jobs going on right now are, are essential workers. We have people of color overly represented in those categories. And so they're exposed to more risk, working in our grocery stores, working in public transportation, trucking, warehousing, all of these industries, healthcare. We already know that Black workers with resumes equivalent to white ones are being paid less and given worse benefits, are more likely to be underemployed. These are already issues that we know exist. And another incident that happened recently that got a lot of attention was a situation in Central Park where a bird watcher named Christian Cooper was telling a white woman named Amy Cooper to leash her dog because she had her dog unleashed in an area, and the dog was, I think, going to damage some flora or like the birds. And in this instance, the woman called the police and said that an African American man was threatening her life, and repeatedly identify him as an African American man multiple times during this call. So this really this is not the only instance of, and back in history, there are the long history of white women making false claims against Black men specifically. We can look at Emmett Till, where there was a false accusation and Emmett Till was killed, murdered, and it was a false accusation completely. And the woman took it until her deathbed to say that it was false. So these are really challenging times in terms of using the police as a weapon. If you're calling the police on a Black person, it's like threatening their life in that way. Mariela?
So let's talk about the straw that broke the camel's back. So many of you have heard about George Floyd. Thumbs, has everyone in this chat heard about George Floyd? Yes. So let's revisit who George Floyd is for those of us who may not know. So George Floyd was a Minnesota resident. This happened just last Monday. He was accused of paying with a counterfeit $20 bill. Supposedly, the cashier at the store was inexperienced, and so the person called 911 when the person who was new, an inexperienced cashier, when this person had perceived this $20 bill to be fake. So, according to the police report, Floyd physically resisted the arrest after he was told to exit his car, a claim that was proved false by footage that was put together, kind of like revisiting the event. That's not the problem. The problem is that a police officer who happens to be white went on to restrain George Floyd and kneeled on his neck for almost 8 minutes, despite George Floyd repeatedly saying, "I can't breathe." The officer then remained with his knee on Floyd's neck even after George Floyd became unresponsive. And so this is really makes a lot of people angry, myself included, because it is the same situation that happened in 2014 when a man here in New York City by the name of Eric Garner uttered the same words 11 times as he was being choked by a police officer in New York City over a pack of cigarettes. So it is a real issue that is happening in terms of the use of force against people. So that is basically what happened with George Floyd, an unnecessary use of police violence that killed a man in broad daylight. Katerina.
And I just want to add about that, that this was video recorded. And unfortunately, many of the situations that are coming out and that are able to be elevated and amplified are because other bystanders are recording. And so, that makes me wonder, like, how many situations are happening where there's no recording. And also just acknowledging that this is not a new issue. There's some people that maybe have not heard of police brutality because it doesn't impact their lives might think it's new. It's not. Their police have been killing black and brown people for decades, forever. So it's social media. The social media world is not like, it's just a different way that we're hearing about it, and it's more. You can't explain it away when there is a video. You can't come up with an alternative story when there is a video. So why do we want to specifically talk about disability and Black Lives Matter and the connections? Like, what is the relevancy? I think you're all here because you feel like it's relevant, but we want to articulate kind of what are some points about that we feel can help express. I'm going to share a quote that I really like. It's called, if you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. That's from Lila Watson. And it's just basically this concept of we are not free until all of us are free. If there's any group or any person in society that is being discriminated against, that is receiving unfair treatment, that is not having equity, then how can we say that we live in a liberated culture? We don't. We also know, like I was mentioning earlier, that within the disability community, people of color, especially members of the Black community, I said it wrong. Okay, people of color, especially members of the Black community, are more likely to be disabled compared to other groups. And this is according to the Disability Rights, Education, and Legal Defense Fund. And they have difficulty accessing health care, which exacerbates the severity of their impairments. There are situations in when early intervention, access to resources, access to information is going to improve someone's outcome. And we see for many conditions and types of disabilities that's not happening. There's not an access to that for all groups. There are a number of reasons. We're asking, like, why are we seeing people of color more likely to be disabled? There are a number of reasons. One reason that we want to just call out today is environmental racism. And basically, it's in a simplified way. It's like there are certain communities that bear the burden of pollutants, poor air quality, trash, sewage, like water that's not clean, and they don't have the power. They don't have, or they're not being listened to. Like, they're speaking up, they're advocating, but they're not. They're still having that high burden of pollutants. That's contaminating communities of color. We saw in Flint, Michigan, a really high profile example of that, where you have lead in the drinking water, which now you have so many children that are going to have lasting damage and learning issues related to the lead poisoning, which is permanent neurological impairments. It's heartbreaking and it's angering. Mariela?
Okay, so let's talk about specific challenges that are faced by the community. And very often these challenges are around communication. And these challenges around communication usually come about because of a lack of training and awareness. So let me tell you the story of how I actually started Project Hearing. So I was living in DC and traveling back and forth to Virginia. If you've ever been to Virginia, you will know Virginia is the worst place to speed because you will get pulled over. There's like a cop every quarter mile. There's a cop in every single piece of highway in Virginia. So anyway, I'm speeding. I was late to something. And of course, as usual. And I hear the fire department, not the fire department, a police siren behind me. Woo, 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 woo. The officer is giving me commands over the loudspeaker. I assume those commands were like, ma'am, please pull over, or please pull over your vehicle, or please turn off your vehicle. I have a hearing disability, and because of my hearing disability, I was not able to understand what the officer was telling me. Luckily, I had practiced beforehand for what to do if and when I get pulled over. And so what I did is that I remained calm, put my hands at 3 and 9, and waited. As I waited for the police officer to come to me, I saw the officer's hand on the holster. And I'm like, I really don't want to die today. Like, that is really all I was thinking. When the police officer came over to my window, knock, knock, I turned around. Officer, I have a hearing disability. I did not understand what you were saying. And when I said that, the situation diffused. The officer responded by saying, I was giving you commands to turn off your vehicle. You were not being compliant. And I said, well, that's because, again, I have a hearing disability. At the end of that whole situation, the officer luckily let me off with a warning. I asked him, hey, no. He said, before he let me go, hey, you're really going to have to figure out what you're going to do about this whole hearing thing, this whole disability thing. It could have escalated. And I was like, well, what do you suggest I do? And he said, that's not my problem. Figure it out. Okay. Totally inappropriate thing to say, but that's a fair point. I had to figure out how I was going to get a police officer to understand that they were going to be interacting with someone that had a hearing disability. And so one of the things that I created are these stickers. They say, deaf drivers. I have them in multiple colors. If you want one, they are on my website. But I created these stickers and I put them in the back of my car so that when a police officer pulls me over, they will know that they are going to be interacting with someone with a hearing disability. Now, this is so important because a person that has a hearing disability who is interacting with a police officer may not understand orders, which is being seen as non-compliant. A person who has a mental disability may be confused or distressed or having an episode. A person who has a developmental or intellectual or cognitive disability may be acting in a way that doesn't make sense to a police officer. And if a police officer is unfamiliar with certain types of disabilities, they may perceive a certain type of behavior as hostile or threatening. There are also certain conditions like asthma, epilepsy, people who have severe migraine who might be temporarily incapacitated and unable to respond. And then there are also people who are mentally ill and in a time of crisis may act combative or confused or be under extreme stress. So basically, there is a huge range of disability that may interfere with a person's ability to understand or comply with a police officer's request, even in the most optimal circumstances. Is everybody with me on all of that? Yes? And the most frustrating thing about the whole thing is that a report by the Ruderman Family Foundation found that people with disabilities make up a third to half of all people killed by law enforcement officers. That is insane. A third to half of all people killed by the police have some sort of disability and were killed because of inability to communicate or because their behavior was seen as non-compliant. Katarina?
Thank you for sharing your story. I see people thanking you. I think that really resonates and it illustrates some, just very clearly what is a situation that could easily happen to a lot of people. So bringing it back to, again, why are we talking about disability, the disabled community and the Black community? The civil rights, the fight for civil rights laid the groundwork for laws and platforms for a lot of other groups. When we look at LGBTQ rights, disability community as well, and there have been allies across history. Like every movement needs all the allies. So I think that that's just something, it's the right thing to do, and it's also been part of our history to be allies. So I just want to also mention that. All right, so now we're going to speak, hopefully, and if not too long, but we want to share some of the things about like what is the movement asking for. It's not even like one movement. There are different groups that have different demands. There's organizations stepping up. So we're going to try to represent some of the demands that we have seen out there. And I am going to go ahead and see if I can share my screen. Okay, is that working? Okay. So this is a campaign by Campaign Zero, where they're highlighting different police reforms 8 use of force policies that they believe can reduce police violence by 72%. All of these policies are things that a local, like at the mayor level, can be enacted, which is one of the reasons that they're calling this out, so that local communities can right away make decisions and changes. So we're just going to quickly go over them. So the first policy is banning chokeholds and strangleholds. And then you have statistics on each one of these on how many of the largest cities already have this in place. So right now, only 28 of the 100 largest cities have this policy in place. Second one, requiring de-escalation. Only 44 of 100 of the largest cities require officers to de-escalate situations before using force. And de-escalation techniques require training. It is a skill to know how to de-escalate situations. So that's one thing. I'm sure that's connected to that. The third policy, requiring a warning before shooting. 67 out of 100 of the largest cities require officers to give a verbal warning before shooting. And, you know, thinking about Mariela's story, a verbal warning, like that's if people hear it. So it's not, you know, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. It's not meant, and each policy is supposed to be additive. It's not like you hopefully only do one of these things. The fourth one, exhaust all alternatives before shooting. All right, Mariela?
There we go. Can you hear me? Yes, all right, great. So policy 5 is a duty to intervene. So if you see an officer that is stepping out of line, it is the responsibility of other officers to keep that officer in check so that the situation doesn't escalate. Policy 6 is to ban shooting at moving vehicles. What is this? Grand Theft Auto absolutely needs to be canceled. Officers should not be allowed to shoot at moving vehicles because there is a high possibility that they will hit civilians who are not involved with whatever is happening. Policy 7 is establish a force continuum. So that means is that there has to be a process for how things will be escalated. You don't go from having a conversation with someone to putting your knee on their neck. There has to be an established medium through which you continuously escalate in small progressive steps. And then finally, the 8th policy is to require all force be reported. One of the things that we are continuously seeing from officers in cases of police brutality is that they have very long complaint sheets of police abuse, police misconduct, and these things are very often just thrown under the rug and not reported. So these 8 policies are requiring that any use of force in any police interaction are reported, so that we can keep track of what is happening and who the bad cops are. Katarina?
Okay, so now that we've shared that Campaign Zero resource, there's also criticism of this campaign that I have become aware of. And so I also want to share this another website that discusses like what is their position on what should be done and how we can address. So I'm going to just set up. All right. And all of this is going to be sent in the notes. We will send out notes, so you don't have to be frequent, like writing things down. So this campaign is called 8 to Abolition. This is their website. So this group calls themselves Police and Prison Abolitionists. They believe that the campaign is dangerous and irresponsible, offering reforms that have already been tried and failed, and that are misleading the public as far as what they should be focusing their energy and their time on. And it also doesn't really make a big difference for communities that are being heavily criminalized and policed. So what they are they have 8 demands. Defund the police. We're spending too much money on the police. Why are we not spending them on social services? And I saw a lot of data about like schools. There are so many schools where I think it was in Oakland, the data, that a lot of the schools have police officers, but they didn't have social workers. They didn't have like a psychiatrist. They didn't have, just like other supportive people with training that could actually help the students. Demilitarize communities. Remove the police from schools. Free people from jails and prisons. Repeal laws that criminalize survival. Invest in community self-governance. Provide safe housing for everyone. And invest in care, not cops. So this website has like more information and ways to share these resources. So they're really focused on abolition. We have so much energy now, and focusing on those 8 can't wait police reforms are perhaps not going to make enough of a difference. So I wanted to present a complete picture of that. In general, there is a movement and has been about criminal justice reform. This includes bail, cash bail, where a lot of people are in jail just because they don't have the money to pay a bail and haven't been tried for a crime, haven't been found guilty at all, spending a lot of time in jails. And we have high-profile cases of suicides and young people that have just had their whole lives derailed by systems of cash bail. And right now, there's not been reform in that area nationwide. And just overall justice and I'm skipping back to you, Mariela. What else are they asking for?
No problem. So essentially, this movement is asking for justice reform, and accountability. It is important for us to acknowledge that a police officer will put their lives on the line every time they put on that uniform. And they promise to respect and protect our communities. However, it is also important for us to acknowledge that when a police officer fails to respect and protect and honor their duty to keep our communities safe, they also need to be held accountable. If a doctor is in a hospital and patients are constantly dying under that doctor, or patients are constantly complaining about that doctor, you will see a hospital going to that doctor and saying, hey, we need to have a talk, you're killing a lot of our patients. And that's something that also needs to happen within police departments. So what the movement is really asking for is for accountability within police departments. Police officers need to be held accountable when they do things that fail to keep us safe, that fail to respect the communities that they are supposed to be protecting. And then one of the things that is happening is that we see a lot of police officers who participate in police brutality and police misconduct, and they face no consequences. There is just no accountability for some police departments when they mess up. So, Katerina?
Yes, and it's overall, we are seeing this. I would say the big picture is that we want to dismantle structural racism and dismantle white supremacy, which sounds really big, and it is, but that's the overall, I would say, big picture view of what would be the biggest change. So now we're going to speak about what does it mean to be an allyship? How can you be an ally? Which I know is something that a lot of you said you wanted to learn about. So Mariela?
Yes, so the first thing is to actively make space for Black people, for people of African American descent in your community. So whenever you host an event, make it inclusive for people who are Black. Make it inclusive for people who have disabilities. If you're hosting an event, try to use a platform that is accessible. If you're making content that talks about this issue, make sure that you make it caption. I actually hosted a workshop for Global Accessibility Awareness Day. There's a whole story behind that, but I hosted a workshop on how to make your content caption. So make your content caption, make it accessible. It's also so important for all of us to speak up and educate our families, our friends, our coworkers. Don't be afraid to like rock the boat or call out your grandma when she says some racist stuff. That's the only way we're going to be able to create real social change, by having conversations with our own families, with our own circles. It's also important when you post on social media, post about this. This is an important issue. If you can, go out there and protest. If you feel comfortable, we're still dealing with a global pandemic, but do so responsibly. And again, the most important thing that you should be doing is just having those hard conversations with people in your own family, with your own friends, with your own coworkers. Catalina?
Yeah. I just to expand a little bit more on, I think in terms of my view on how to be an ally, is like everyone's going to do it in their own way. We all have different perspectives. We all have different identities. We all have different groups that we're a part of, whether that's a social group, a club, a company, your family, your neighborhood, wherever you're a member, you have an opportunity to make change. You have an opportunity to share your perspective, and you have an opportunity to challenge something that's unfair. And it does require stepping beyond your comfort zone. Sometimes you don't have the right words, and that's okay. But I think committing to trying is one of the best things that you can do. Just committing to trying. I also, if you are someone that doesn't go out there and protest, and you may have various reasons, you might not feel safe, and that's totally okay. I also think that there's this visibility and this kind of moment that, the protests are very visible. And what we don't see are what people are doing every day in their communities, perhaps, or those conversations that are had behind closed doors. So don't feel guilty if you can't protest, if it's not safe for you, if you don't feel comfortable doing it. Don't feel guilty. Think about what can your role be, and own that and honor that, and know that that's enough as long as you are trying and actively engaged. I think feeling guilty or feeling bad about it is going to just get in the way of the work. I also would recommend just being proactive, checking your own biases and your prejudices. All of us have some type of unconscious bias. We're programmed by society. We're raised watching movies and commercials. So all these things are unconsciously impacting the way our brains operate. And so work on that. It's not an easy fix, but try to acknowledge that and people don't want to think that they could be racist, and it's not. I don't think there's just you're racist or you're not racist. You might have a thought, or you might say something that's problematic, and that doesn't mean that you have to. I just don't think that you can fully exempt yourself from not being racist, or having a racist thought, or saying something that's wrong, or whatever. So I just think don't let yourself off the hook, and consider there might be a possibility that there is a racist thought somewhere, perhaps, in your brain.
I also want to add one thing. Having my own conversations with my own family, my own friends, my own coworkers. A lot of people have told me, I don't want to be involved with this issue, or they have said things that I find problematic, especially when talking about the issue that happened with George Floyd, I have a simple answer to that. It's not about being racist or not being racist. It's very simple. It's black and white. You either believe that it is totally justified for a police officer to put his knee on a man while he is yelling, "I can't breathe," as he lays dying on the ground unresponsive. You either believe that is okay and that is totally justified, or you don't. Like, there's no in between, there's no gray area, there's no open maybe. You either believe it is justified or it isn't. And if you believe it is justified, then we need to explore why that is, because that's kind of racist. So that's really is my take on this issue. It's not a gray issue. It's either you believe it is okay or you don't, period.
All right. Building on that. I see a lot of great suggestions in the chat. Like, read those if you're not reading them. Figure out what your role can be where you have power. You have power in your family, you have power in your workplace, in your neighborhood, in your city. And I think making commitments to what you feel comfortable doing, whether that's donating money, whether that's advocating, making phone calls. I'm one of the people that I see a lot of calls to, call this person, advocate for this. And I feel like, I could be doing that more. I could definitely be doing that more. So that's just a challenge for myself. Educating yourself. This was happening earlier in the chat. There are a lot of people that want to look, they want the Black community to teach them, to help them learn, spend a lot of time and energy on them. And that's wholly unfair. It's your responsibility to work on yourself, your self-education. And I've seen groups, for example, like white anti-racist groups, where it's white people around other white people that they're going to educate and they're going to discuss and they're going to do work on that together. And I think that's like a great option, because a lot of people just maybe haven't been exposed ever. And so that's kind of like an easy way that they are basically trying to opt out of actually doing the research, because the information is out there. There are tons of reading lists, and we're going to share. And there, if you're on Netflix, we have 13, you have documentaries. There's lots of stuff out there. And there are books just for, if you're a white person, there are books just for white people, focusing on how to understand racism and be actively anti-racist. And those are really the steps to take. Taking steps to becoming actively anti-racist. There's, I'm sure, a continuum, just like any other process for getting there. And that's okay. Honor where you are, but if you keep trying and you keep working on it, then you'll get to a place where you see a difference and you are making an impact. So now we want to chat a little bit more about it. We've already been having lots of additions in the chat box, but we want to know, how do you practice allyship? How do you be an ally? What are your recommendations? And what are your questions? We'll do our best, but we also have people in the chat sharing amazing, incredible resources who are also engaged. So I'm seeing some great suggestions from them. Mariela, do you want to call out anything interesting from the chat?
So we have a few people here asking how to connect and share the Disabled Blacks Lives movement. So how do we connect? How do we learn from people? How do we connect with the resources that are already out there? One of the resources that was suggested by Keenan is going on Instagram and going #BlackDeafTalent. One of the resources that I have found to educate myself is #Disable Black Lives Matter. I found quite a few people by using that hashtag. And then there's also quite a few people within the disability space that are continuously talking about this issue, both in their feeds and in their stories. I'm constantly elevating those voices in my own channel. And Katarina is as well. So that may be a great resource for all of you to kind of just get plugged in. Molly just shared an amazing book called White Fragility. It is highly, highly, highly recommended. I've been seeing that pop up everywhere. If anybody has, but really, I want to ask everyone in the chat, how are you guys practicing allyship? Like, how are you dealing with having these conversations? You can go in the chat or maybe unmute yourself, Katarina. Or do you prefer the chat?
I think in the chat is fine, unless people. The question, Keenan wants to repeat of the question. Can you repeat the question, Mariela?
Absolutely. So the question is, how do you practice allyship? Yeah, we just both put it in.
Yes.
Twitter thumbs.
Yeah. And if you're not doing, if you're one of those people that maybe you feel like you weren't doing enough before, that's okay. Like, what are you thinking about doing? What are you hoping to do? And just even saying those commitments out loud, writing it, makes it more likely that you're going to take the action that you do want to take. Okay, wonderful. Listening, learning, donating, social media, talking to family and friends. Thank you, Anna. And it's totally fine if you're in a listen and learn space. If you just want to work on yourself, that's great.
It's also important for us to acknowledge that there are some people who are very deeply affected by everything that is happening. I want to suggest that self-care is so important. You cannot take care of other people unless you're taking care of yourself. So if you're someone that is affected by this and you need like a timeout or you need like a social media detox, highly encourage that every once in a while you have to take care of you so that you can continue to do this work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. It's a great reminder. I mean, like, we're still dealing with COVID, so your energy, your stress level, like everything it might really be affected right now. There might be just like one small thing you can do, and that's okay. Even,
Yes.
don't push yourself. Do your self-care and try to figure out your energy so that you can give when you feel like your energy is up. I also want to say that if you are a person of color, a member of the Black community, this is a time where you can tell other people how can they be an ally from your perspective. I saw already the comment that we spoke a lot about, don't come to me for education. Work on it yourself, self-educate, which is always a really, really good point. I actually saw, this is interesting. Keenan is talking about you trying to encourage and create spaces at work to help other Asian coworkers to be an ally. One of my best friends from college is Korean, and she reposted something on Facebook that was talking, it was like a discussion about anti-Blackness within the Asian community. And I think that it was really resonating with a lot of people. And so just even being in a spaces where you're engaging or hosting conversations that are hard and that can help people process things and understand and make changes internally and at a community level is really important and meaningful. I always think I'm done with the chat, and then there's so much more that I don't. Carolyn, okay, great. Introspection, reading, postings, attending talk, amplifying voices. That's amazing. Okay, I don't know, is it Joshira? Joshira, maybe? Reaching out to organizations in the community to challenge them to be more inclusive. Calling into town halls. This is great. Okay, got a lot of actions there. Writing letters. Peter's writing letters. Protesting, having conversations. Oh, okay. Oh. These are different ways. Signing petition.
I also want to acknowledge, like, Shakespeare's point is that sometimes you don't have to just, you don't have to do that. Sometimes you can just move in silence. You can donate to organizations. You can send a quick message like, hello, how are you? How are things, without that being the only thing you talk about. Like, hey, just saying hello. And then letting the person tell you whether that's a topic they even want to discuss with you.
Oh my gosh. I am laughing over this last comment from Shakespeare. Yes. Yeah. It's really good. We're getting almost to the end of our time. We have 3 minutes left. And so just a reminder that we are going to send out notes. We are going to send out the resources that we have. It's not going to be everything that's out there, but it's going to be what we have been able to put together. And I really want to thank everybody for being here, for showing up. Showing up is underrated sometimes, but you chose to give your time and your energy to this conversation. So
thank you.
Yes, thank you. That is awesome.
Anybody has any last thoughts or comments that they want to share?
Keenan's asking for Instagram handles. If people do want to connect, post your handle in the chat.
Maybe what we can do, Katarina, once we send out the notes, is also provide like a shared Google Sheet. If people want to share their emails or their Instagram handles, they can share that in there. What do you think? That way, we're not sharing your information. You share as you see fit.
Sure. We can facilitate that through the notes when we send that out. We can have people let us know if they want to be part of it or not. Okay. Oh, yes. Anna's asking how we can continue the conversation. Well, just for you to know, every 2 weeks, we have another Chicas Talk Disability. And we changed the topic for this one based on the urgency that we felt around this topic. So there could be an opportunity to continue. There could be an opportunity to figure out another way to continue the conversation. So I'll brainstorm with Mariela. If you have specific ideas about how to continue this conversation and what you would like to see, let us know.
Let me see. We'll have to have that conversation offline. Katarina, I think like we could create a Facebook group. We could create a Slack channel. We could create an email list. Like, we're just not gonna sleep. But we'll keep y'all updated on how we decide to do that. Katarina and I finally created our first MailChimp account. So we're kind of like slowly moving in that direction. So one step at a time. LW is like first Google Meet, next the world. That's the plan. But for now, let's just grow scale slowly, so that we can make it sustainable.
Yes.
All right, so that's it. See everybody in 2 weeks.
All right. Thank you for joining.
Alrighty. Maybe we should have some goodbye music.
Okay. Let me look up this song. There was a song in the beginning. Okay. I can get this.
Bye, everyone.
Well, Dad's still dead.
What is this? No. It's an ad. It's an.
Oh boy, I'm gonna start closing everybody. So everybody, it was so nice to talk to all of you. Alrighty.
Unless you mean it, you say you banking out and paid. I don't believe it. I've been running on empty. Hit the studio. Yeah, I came through with the Henny. Can't say no to anything.
Hold on, let me tell Andy that we're finished.
Press me, let's see. All you really do is drop names. I don't care who you know, don't press me. Never see you make a move of your own. Never headline the tour, never sold. I just show fall back. They got you gassed up, passed out. You ain't really got that. Always talking sayings. The fuck do you mean? Do exactly what I want, no limits, that's dreams. Props to the queen, stop with the beat, cause you be all over it. If I said hop on the beat, don't talk to police. But I'm all about the peace and respected to the streets. Globally, whoa, that's me, girl with the problems. Picking up on misery, backstage with a bottle. And whoever wanna suck, come through. Except for the bitch in the back, fuck you. We scheming. Woo! Making money across the globe, it's like I'm dreaming. Don't make a threat.
Alrighty.
Okay. Stop recording.
Oh yes. Hold on. And we are finished.